My consort and I were a famously nominal couple. He lived his life as the young lord, and I lived mine as the princess. We resided in separate mansions and left each other alone until his brash little cousin came to the capital. She was an overly spoiled young girl, relying on the consort's protection and affection. She, accidentally, burst into my study and set fire to all my cherished keepsakes. Afterwards, she cowered behind the consort. Pouting, she complained, "I just can't stand it. She's already married to you, yet she keeps a whole room of paintings of other men." Pei Pingjin made excuses for her. "My cousin is just too protective of me. Your Highness, please don't be angry." I nodded. I was the great princess above all. Why should I be angered by a little girl? But as I turned, I suddenly drew my sword. With a swift sound, it pierced through the consort's palm as he tried to block the blade, and slashed the girl's throat. Blood splattered 3 feet. That overly spoiled girl. The arrogance and smugness on her face had yet to fade, but already her color drained. With a thud, she fell to the ground. Her once helpless black eyes, which had always glared at me, now swirled with terror and shock. Even in death, her eyes remained fixed straight on my toes. The guests enjoying the flowers in the courtyard were all frozen in shock, trembling in fear. I dropped the bloodstained sword and said casually, "We haven't finished appreciating the flowers yet. Everyone sit down." The yellow peonies in the courtyard, stained with blood, looked like tears or blood, cold and hauntingly beautiful, just right for viewing. Those nobles who had craned their necks, eagerly waiting to see me humiliated by a confrontation, had no choice but to suppress their terror. Under my oppressive will, they obediently returned to their seats, burying their heads in flower viewing and tea drinking. The dead female corpse, Lu Qingshuang, lay sprawled there boldly, like an exposed corpse for all to see, a stark warning to those old officials and nobles who thought to give me a lesson or make a show of me. Lu Qingshuang called herself a wild weed, fearing neither wind nor rain, growing wantonly. She would often put on an arrogant, rude front before me, flaunting her frankness and unrestraint. Little did she know, she and I were as different as clouds and mud. If not for the Pei family, in this life, she had to exert all her strength just to raise her head and walk before me. She loved to flaunt herself in my presence and provoke my patience, so today I granted her wish. She died right before me. The prince consort Pei Pingjin, clutching his pierced palm, his face twisted, roared at me. "It's just a few paintings and calligraphy. I'll compensate you, Xie Jishu. Why are you so cruel?" I ignored his impotent rage, took the handkerchief handed by Lingyun, wiped my hands that were not dirty at all, and slowly sat back in the main seat. A servant handed me a cup of tea, Gu Zhu purple shoot. The leaves were shaped like bamboo shoots, purple and glossy. When the Empress Dowager bestowed it upon me, she praised it as a priceless treasure of the world. But it was inherently astringent. The bitterness was obvious and didn't suit my taste. I had tried it before, but even now it still couldn't find favor in my eyes. I didn't reach out, so the servant, with discernment, removed the oil spot Tenmaku tea bowl. They replaced it with my favorite Mengding stone flower tea. Pei Pingjin held his cousin's body, still warm but already lifeless, grieving as if he had lost his own parents. In sorrow and pain, he knelt on the ground, making no effort to conceal the surging hatred in his eyes. "In your Highness's eyes, a human life is worth less than your paintings." His gaze turned cold, and he squeezed out a vicious sentence through gritted teeth. "Or could it be that your Highness truly has some illicit dealings with the person in those paintings?" With a crack, the bowl of hot tea I had just brought to my lips slammed hard into Pei Pingjin's temple. Blood mixed with tea water streamed down his face. He faced me stubbornly in that disheveled state. "I'll let you die with clarity." Ling Yun clapped his hands, and the guards escorted the steward into the courtyard. I rested my chin on my hand and glanced sideways, then asked slowly, "How did an outsider like her get into my study?" As my words fell, Pei Pingjin's face turned pale, and the steward shrank back even more. Trembling, he begged for mercy. "The study is a restricted area. Outsiders cannot casually enter." But she held the consort's token. I exchanged a look with Pei Pingjin. "I gave you the convenience of entering and leaving the princess's residence." And it became the capital for her arrogance. Pei Pingjin shot me a deep look, a chilling coldness rising between his brows. just because of a jade token? You, the esteemed Grand Princess. He was so petty as to take her life. Today, everyone here is witness. I, Pei Pingjin, must seek justice for my cousin. He picked up Lu Qingshuang's cold body and was about to stand up when I let out a sneer. Ling Yun's great sword pressed heavily onto Pei Pingjin's shoulder, forcing him back to his knees. Pei Pingjin was thoroughly enraged, his eyes bloodshot as he roared at me ferociously. What more do you want? Won't you even let my cousin's remains go? The crowd was deathly silent, not daring to breathe. They were all old-timers in the capital, and they must still remember. The last person who was this arrogant before me was my imperial elder brother, Crown Prince Zhaoxiu, whose head I cut off and hung on the palace wall. They were all waiting to see Pei Pingjin's fate. But I had promised someone that I would be a reasonable person from now on. So I lifted my eyelids toward Ling Yun, and she placed her blade against the old steward's neck. Even the consort is not allowed to casually enter His Highness's study. Have you forgotten the rules of the princess's estate? The old steward bowed his head low. She is holding the consort's jade token and threatening this old servant with her pregnancy. I only sought a brief rest in the side villa, but who would have thought she would climb over the wall and enter your highness's study? Please forgive my transgression. As my words fell, with a glance from me, Ling Yun swung his broadsword. A flash of cold light, and the old steward's neck was severed with a single stroke. His head rolled to Pei Pingjin's feet. Once disloyal, never trusted again. I looked down at Pei Pingjin's shock and terror, uttering each word deliberately. In my study, there were not just a few portraits, but also the defense map of Great Yong, the gifts from the late emperor, and the imperial edict of immunity. With each item I named, Pei Pingjin's face turned paler by a degree. When his face was drained of all color, I smiled and declared loudly, Lu Qingshuang sneaked into my study, stole the secrets of Great Yong, and took the imperial edict of immunity. Then she burned the study to destroy the evidence. This act harbored malicious intent and was tantamount to treason. I executed her on the spot. What fault is there in that? Enough! Pei Pingjin cried out. If you want to convict someone, you can always find a pretext. My cousin is already dead. Of course you can say whatever you want, isn't that so? I gave a sardonic laugh. With a clap of his hands, someone brutally forced Pei Pingjin to his knees. As he screamed hysterically, they viciously seized Lu Qingshuang's corpse. Pei Pingjin's cries echoed to the heavens. What do you want? I'll agree to anything. Please, Your Highness, stop humiliating Qingshuang. Looking down at his pathetic, miserable state, I stirred my tea and replied casually, Of course, I'll have an on-the-spot autopsy performed. Pei Pingjin's pupils contracted, his whole body trembling. The onlookers turned pale, at a loss. Taking in everyone's expressions, I chuckled lightly. As a princess of this realm, I naturally cannot wrong the consort's cousin. Whether she stole anything or not, with the dead bearing no witness, it's truly hard to investigate. But whether there's a child in her belly, cutting her open will reveal the truth. Pei Pingjin was overcome with grief. The short knife for cutting open the abdomen was handed to the coroner. Lu Qingshuang's clothes were loosened, and her last shred of modesty was about to be stripped away in full view of everyone. Pei Pingjin's cries were miserable, filling the courtyard with wails. I watched without any ripple of emotion until Lu Qingshuang's last layer of red belly band was about to be undone, when Pei Pingjin suddenly shouted, Enough! I confess. He was a mess of tears and snot. He no longer looked human. Only then did I wave my hand, signaling the coroner and the guards holding him to stop. But Pei Pingjin, as if his spine had been broken, could not get up for a long time. He lay prostrate on the ground. Pain and despair had torn him to pieces. With a weeping voice and begging, he said word by word, Cousin is carrying my child, Your Highness. Spare her. If so. Then I resolutely stood up. Just as everyone's hearts leaped into their throats, I cut off one of the prince consort's fingers with a knife. Amid his screams, I shouted in a cold voice, The prince consort is unfaithful, which is tantamount to deceiving the emperor. I, this princess, will divorce him. Guards, prepare the carriage to enter the palace. Pei Pingjin's expression froze, his face full of disbelief. I didn't even give him an extra glance. Dragging my long skirt, I resolutely boarded the carriage heading to the palace, having accompanied me all the way to today. Relying on Pei Pingjin's face, the Pei family had gained enough, and I had endured long enough. The current Empress Dowager was from the Pei family, and when she was still a young girl, she had received the favor of the Pei matriarch of the Marquis Manor. Therefore, when the Marquis of Pei suddenly died of illness and the Pei family stood alone with little support, the Empress Dowager issued an edict, betrothing the only princess in the palace to Pei Pingjin. Though I was the great princess of the Daong imperial family and was treated as the apple of the late emperor's eye, my reputation was far from good, ruthless, without kinship, for power, money, fame, and profit. I had nearly slaughtered the entire former court and harem alongside the current emperor. Even my childhood sweetheart's cousin and aunt, one eye beheaded and hung on the city wall, the other eye strangled with a 3-foot white silk in the harem. A love built on lives taken could never end well. He galloped away to the frontier, while I guarded the imperial city alone. From then on, separated by mountains and rivers, we could not meet in life or death. Just as the new emperor ascended the throne, envoys arrived, and the Eastern Liao crown prince offered 3 cities to seek marriage with me, the venomous snake. To refuse would be lacking in righteousness for the country. To go would be to walk into the tiger's mouth, with only a slim chance of survival. At this moment of dilemma, the Empress Dowager extended an olive branch to me, a mutually beneficial marriage in name only. Pei Pingjin was willing, and I did not refuse. After the grand wedding, I used the excuse of being accustomed to my own ways and continued to reside in the princess's mansion. Pei Pingjin, under the pretense of attending to his grandmother's illness, also moved back to the Yongning Marquis estate. The two of us became the city's most famous nominal couple. He played his part as the willful young marquis, while I played mine as the all-powerful grand princess. We lived apart in our respective estates, never interfering with each other. In fact, on the social stage of fame and fortune, we maintained each other's dignity and complimented one another until his reckless little cousin arrived in the capital. She was a young lady so rash as to be nearly rude. 3 months ago, I had taken great pains to acquire a pastry chef from Jiangnan, whose delicacies were all the rage in the capital. My plan was to hone his skills in the princess's mansion before sending him to the palace to satisfy the empress's greedy palate. But the pastry chef had barely entered the capital when he was intercepted, not by anyone else, but by the consort's cousin, Lu Qingshuang. Pouting and using the consort's name as her banner, she stopped the man and redirected him to the Yongning Marquis estate. When hiring a master craftsman, it's naturally a matter of the highest bidder. Just because she's a princess, you shouldn't grovel and flatter, breaking the rules of the trade. Besides, those pastries were so good, if the princess can eat them, then my aunt, her rightful mother-in-law, cannot? At first, Pei Pingjin was aware of the difficulty. He hurriedly grabbed the pastry chef and was about to come to the princess's residence to apologize to me. But Lu Qingshuang, hands on her hips, blocked him in the courtyard and scolded him fiercely. "Cousin, it's because you haven't established your husband's authority that she rides roughshod over you, making the Marquis' mansion a laughingstock in the whole capital for living off a woman. If you don't indulge her, she'll naturally appreciate your worth. Don't go. I'm your cousin. Would I harm you?" Pei Pingjin was swayed. My pastry chef was held up in the Marquis' mansion. After all, we were husband and wife, and the mansion had suffered some criticism and grievances because of me. It was just a matter of indulging in food. Yielding once wouldn't hurt. But if you give an inch, they'll take a mile. Pei Pingjin had promised me he would find the best uncut jade in the mines as a gift for the child in the Empress's womb. That unique piece of jade was as white as mutton fat. The jade was lustrous and spiritual. Ling Yun had only glanced at it once before heaping praise upon me. I was so preoccupied with this jade that I let go of my displeasure with the pastry chef. But the next month, that piece of jade was split into 3. The best piece became a translucent bracelet on Lu Qingshuang's wrist. The core, hollowed out, was divided into 2. One became a pendant on Lu Qingshuang's waist, and the other became a jade ornament on Lu Qingshuang's necklace. She stiffened her neck, flaunting her body full of emerald jade at the Marquis' mansion banquet. Every word was aimed at me. The Empress Dowager praised me for being charming and petite, saying that although the jade was old-fashioned and dreary, wearing it split into 3 pieces on me actually looked playful. I leaned back in the grand armchair, taking in all her smugness. At this moment, if I still couldn't see the deliberate targeting in her eyes, I would have wasted all those years living in the palace. My disdainful smile, in her eyes, became a forced grin. So she pressed her advantage, raising her wine glass and asking me from afar, "Your Highness is very wise, knowing that your own splendor is restrained, not needing jade ornaments to weigh you down, lest you appear aged." Paping Jean's face changed drastically. Hastily apologizing to me, he said, "My cousin is young and ignorant, speaking without restraint. She meant no harm. Please forgive her, Your Highness." I picked up my wine cup, maintaining a composed smile. If the young lady doesn't understand propriety, does the consort himself? At my words, the hall fell silent. I continued, "That jade cost me a full 30,000 taels of silver. It shattered on her. Who is going to pay for it?" Lu Qingshuang's face turned pale, but she straightened her back and blustered. "If Your Highness wanted the jade, you could have just said so. For my cousin's sake, I might have let you have it. You're married. It's unbecoming to split things between yours and mine over a worthless trinket. People might laugh at Your Highness's pettiness." I ignored her, fixing my gaze squarely on Paping Jean. "Banknotes or silver coins, delivered today or sent to the princess's mansion tomorrow. You decide." In an instant, Paping Jean's face drained of all color. He asked hoarsely, "How could it have belonged to His Majesty?" I glanced at Lu Qingshuang, who cowered without daring to speak, then pointed at the jade pendants all over her body and sneered, "If it belonged to me, then it was taken without asking, shattered, and made into these ugly trinkets." As my words fell, the pastry chef I had summoned to the capital, upon hearing the news, he rushed to my side, ignoring all attempts to stop him, and fell to his knees with a thud, crying for help. His forehead was bloodied from knocking against the bluestone bricks, and his hands were splayed with fingers that couldn't straighten. He wailed, "Your Highness, save me." It turned out that the pastry chef who had been forcibly taken into the Marquis's residence by sheer arrogance was living a truly miserable life. Lu Qingshuang, to display her benevolence and magnanimity before others, forced the pastry chef to work day and night making pastries. Those pastries, wrapped in oil paper, were handed out by Lu Qingshuang as gifts of grace to everyone around, the maids in the courtyard, the gatekeepers, the street vendors, and the beggars in the alleys. Everyone could receive the loving kindness of the Marquis's young cousin. She was a straightforward person, simply wanting the lowly people of the capital to taste pastries that only the high and mighty could afford. Those who received a pastry they'd never see in a lifetime called her a living Buddha. In secret, they praised her as innocent and kind, saying that if she were the heir's wife, it would truly be the Marquis's fortune. But it was the pastry chef who suffered, forced to work for a pittance. She forbade any assistance, locked him in the backyard kitchen, making pastries day and night. If he was slow, ruined any, or slacked off, he would be scolded. It was an unbearable torment day and night. Even if he closed his eyes for a brief nap, Lu Qingshuang would jerk him awake with a whip, yelling at him for taking money without doing the job, threatening to report him to the authorities. A commoner does not fight an official. The pastry chef suffered miserably, until his eyes grew dim, until he became gaunt as a skeleton, until his hands twisted so badly he could not even hold chopsticks. Lu Qingshuang was confronted face to face by the pastry chef, yet she still did not realize her fault. Craning her neck, she shouted, "I hired you at a high price to come to the mansion and make pastries. That's your job. How dare you haggle?" I glanced calmly at the pastry chef. I asked, "When I first invited you to the capital, I promised 1,000 gold coins per day, which is the standard price in the capital." Miss Lu said the highest bidder wins. She was so confident. Presumably, she had offered an exorbitant wage. The pastry chef thumped his forehead on the ground. "The Marquis's mansion has never paid me a single coin." At those words, the entire courtyard erupted in shock. The nobles of the capital valued face above all. Her love of comparison was built on the solid confidence and arrogance of real silver flowing like water. There was no second household in the entire capital like the Marquis's, which wanted the face of nobility without spending the money. Pleasantly put, it was owed wages. Bluntly put, it was imprisonment and enslavement of the people. The disdainful stares of the crowd were like knives, layer by layer shredding the dignity of the Marquis's household into a sieve. Lu Qingshuang, condemned by all, froze in place. She was like a chicken with its neck wrung, no longer able to strut around. At 1,000 taels a day, The pastry chef had stayed at the Marquis's mansion for 41 days in total. That made 41,000 taels, plus the 30,000 tael jade. An expenditure of over 70,000 taels of silver. Even stripping bare this hollow shell of a marquis couldn't produce it. That was the bill paid for the young lady's boldness, righteousness, and recklessness. Pei Pingjin was terrified. He couldn't afford the silver. Nor could he bear the weight of the emperor's wrath and the condemnation of 1,000 fingers. So he turned to me and said, "Your Highness, Qing Shuang is still young. It is my failure to discipline her. I swear I will teach her properly from now on. You've vented your anger enough. Your Highness, don't keep harping on her." I suddenly laughed out loud. The one who owes money is you, Pei Pingjin, and the Marquis' estate. Naturally, I won't let you off. At the moment when Pei Pingjin grinds his teeth in anger, I stood up. Can't pay back? No matter. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager acted as guarantor for your Marquis' estate. She will repay this money. Lu Qingshuang, who had just used the Empress Dowager to suppress me, heard that I was going to ask the Empress Dowager to cover the expenses of her foolish and reckless actions. She instantly went limp, almost collapsing to the ground. The Empress Dowager, being above all, is not one to renege on debts. After I came banging on her door making a public fuss, she gritted her teeth and had someone deliver 80,000 taels of silver, publicly stating that no change was needed, intending to mock me for valuing money over relationships and being greedy. Since she was so generous, I couldn't be stingy. I immediately used the remaining 9,000 taels to set up a porridge station, distributing porridge to refugees in the name of Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's benevolence and righteousness. However, the funds were too little. After only 3 days of porridge distribution, there was no grain left. The refugees were filled with grievances. Behind her back, they cursed the Dowager Empress for seeking fame and caring nothing for the common people's suffering. After all, she wasn't the emperor's biological mother, only putting on a show while turning a blind eye to their hardships. The Dowager Empress was caught in a bind, trapped between 9,000 taels. Gritting her teeth, she donated another tens of thousands of taels. Both the Dowager Empress and the Marquis' household had to swallow their losses. Pei Pingjin was scolded mercilessly by the Dowager Empress, while Lu Qingshuang feigned illness and hid away in the Marquis' residence, dodging the sharp tongues of the entire capital. I emerged victorious and turned around to send 80,000 taels to the Empress. Through her hands, I purchased military supplies and grain, sending them to the border. My governess combed my hair, fuming. Who does she think she is? And what rank do you hold, Your Highness? To even bother with her is to honor her. I've given her too much face. That so-called cousin is nothing but a bastard daughter the Marquis' brother had outside. Lifted into the capital by that person in the palace, she became a tool to force you and the prince consort into sharing a bed. Being Dowager Empress isn't enough for her. I think she wants to die. My governess was quick-tempered and hot-headed, always too impatient about my affairs. I looked into the mirror at her face, already etched with wrinkles. My heart softened a bit. At your age, you still can't control your temper. If something happens in your haste, I'll have to trouble myself to support you in your old age. Nanny rolled her eyes. I'm still in good health. Then her voice weakened. I'm still waiting for Huaishang to come with a grand sedan chair to marry Your Highness. In the mirror, I slowly withdrew the faint smile. I subconsciously grasped my empty wrist, realizing with a shock that he and the jade were long gone. The old man has passed. Luckily, Ling Yun and Nanny have always been here. Until a month ago, when I was taking a nap in the study, Pei Pingjin barged into the princess's mansion with Lu Qingshuang in a fluster. It turned out that Lu Qingshuang's maidservant had been poisoned. I possessed the only resurrection pill in the capital. They claimed to come borrow the pill, but couldn't even wait for servant to announce them and rushed straight into the backyard. Nanny already disliked the two of them, and fearing they would disturb my peaceful sleep, she stepped forward to block them and angrily scolded Pei Pingjin. You, the consort, are at least the heir of a marquis. Have you forgotten the basic etiquette and rules of conduct? It seems the lesson from last month wasn't enough to teach the young master proper courtesy and obedience. As her words fell, Lu Qingshuang unexpectedly rushed forward and viciously shoved the old nanny into the nearby lotus pond. The lotus pond was primarily ornamental, covered with all kinds of pebbles. The nanny stumbled in, hitting her forehead on the stone, blood gushing. The servants scrambled to fish her out, but Lu Qingxuang stood with her hands on her hips and pouted as she scolded. An old hag of a servant, yet she dares to ride on someone else's coattails and put on airs before the prince consort? If she doesn't die from this fall, she'll lose half her life. Let that be a lesson to her, so she knows who the master of this house is. Pei Pingjin scolded with affection. You just can't learn to restrain your temper. Don't cause such trouble next time. As his words fell, Pei Pingjin met my eyes, which were laden with icy murderous intent. Without waiting for Pei Pingjin to speak, Lu Qingxuang straightened her back and lifted her chin at me. She had been disrespectful to the prince consort. Your Highness ought to teach her a lesson. Since I saw you were absent, I took the initiative to discipline your household slave on your behalf. I hope your Highness will consider my dedication to the princess's mansion and set aside past grievances to lend me the resurrection pill. Pei Pingjin's lips trembled for a long while before he finally let out a sigh and walked toward me step by step. Your Highness, that medicine is worthless if left unused. Qingxuang's maidservant grew up with her. Just for my sake, lend it to her. Pei Pingjin had red lips and white teeth, gentle and upright, hailed as the unparalleled noble son of the capital. But now, no matter how I looked at him, he made me sick. I couldn't hold back anymore and curled the corner of my mouth. With a thud, I grabbed his collar and hurled him violently into the lotus pond. His head struck a large stone, and in an instant, blood stained the pond. Lu Qingxuang's face turned deathly pale as she screamed, "Xie Zhishu, what are you doing?" The next moment, Ling Yun struck the back of her knee with the handle of his blade, and she fell with a thud, kneeling before me. Ling Yun slapped her several times, leaving her lips bleeding and her face swollen like a pig's head, crying out Your Highness's personal name. This is a crime of great disrespect, punishable by having the tongue cut off and displayed as a warning. Lu Qingxuang was stunned into silence, not even daring to cry loudly. She looked fearfully at Pei Pingjin, who was struggling to climb out of the pool. I did not let her down. I picked up Ling Yun's saber, stepping on Pei Pingjin's unease and anger, and walked step by step to his side. Just as he was about to climb out of the water, with a bang, the hilt of the saber smashed into his forehead, sending him tumbling back into the water. Pei Pingjin opened his mouth in fury, but was choked by mouthfuls of cold water, coughing so much he couldn't utter a single complete word. Nanny who has served me for 18 years. She is no longer what you call a servant, but my family. You, bringing your reckless people to my doorstep, are seeking your own death. Today, I will grant you what you deserve. Pei Pingjin crawled to the shore again, his momentum softened, no longer as justified as before. When he met my eyes, there was even a plea. Your Highness, I know I was wrong. I looked down at him with undisguised sarcasm. I gave you many chances, but you never cherished them. My scabbard lifted his chin. Now it's too late. With a thud, I struck his forehead again with the scabbard, sending him sprawling back into the center of the water. He struggled feebly, taking a long while to climb back up, his body drenched in blood-red stains that had long since obscured his original appearance. Looking at his pitiful, barely breathing state and Lu Qingxuang's speechless terror, I sneered and said, "So you realize you were wrong? You're just afraid of dying." Turning to Lu Qingxuang, I smiled wickedly. You called yourself a resilient reed, unyielding, refusing to blend in with the world, saying no one could break your spine. I'll make you see firsthand how your stupidity has brought the Marquis's mansion and your cousin to utter ruin. In the face of the pool's crimson water and Pei Pingjin's ghastly state, Lu Qingxuang was truly terrified. She kowtowed desperately, begging, "I was wrong. Please, Your Highness, spare my cousin. He's dying. Please, for the sake of your past marriage, show mercy." I let out a cold laugh and gave her a choice. You die or he dies. Pick one. I promise. One can survive. Lu Qingxuang was clearly taken aback. Under my scrutiny, her pupils contracted, her gaze evasive. I naturally want my cousin to live. Very well. Yudi. As soon as I finished speaking, she hastily interrupted. But if I die for my cousin, he'll live the rest of his life in guilt, worse than dead. I can't harm him. I beg Your Highness to show mercy. Spare us this once. It was my first time seeing someone so brazenly afraid of death, yet so self-righteous. I crouched down, using the hilt of my knife to lift Pei Pingjin's chin, and smiled. One is shameless, the other clueless about death. You two are a perfect match. I'll send her down to keep you company. But remember, it was your dear cousin who pushed you to your death. I raised the knife hilt again, using all my strength to shatter his skull, leaving him no place to die. Princess, hold on. But at that critical moment, the Empress Dowager's personal maid arrived. My blade paused midair. With great interest, I said, "Maid, you've come just in time. You saw it with your own eyes. When you return to the palace, you can give the Empress Dowager a proper account." I was about to act when the governess urgently shouted, "Your Highness, please look at this before you do anything." In her hand, she held a jade pendant that Zhao Huaisheng always carried with him. My pupils contracted, and murderous intent surged within me. His belongings were never out of his possession. "Why is it in your hands?" The governess cast me a deep look. On the battlefield, swords and arrows have no eyes. A letter from the army says General Zhao has gone missing in action. Now there is no news of him. I saw the naked implication in the governess's eyes clearly. As long as they had the item, he might still be alive. I took a step back for Zhao Huaisheng's sake. I owed him that much. The governess had Pei Pingjin carried away, and Lu Qingshuang dragged off as well. Afterwards, rumors swirled across the capital, saying I was jealous and petty, that I refused to lend the Marquis's life-saving medicine, making false excuses, and going too far with the prince consort. When the gossip was at its peak, the Dowager Empress sat across from me with the air of an elder, bestowing upon me Guju purple bamboo tea. Her smile gathered in the creases of her eyes, pushing out the crisscrossed ambitions of power. "This tea is worth 1,000 gold, a rare treasure in the world. Princess, why not take it back to try?" I refused noncommittally. I love Mengding stone flower, but cannot bear the bitterness of this tea. The Empress Dowager's smile faded, her hand still stirring the tea bowl as she said to herself, "Choosing tea is like choosing people. Personal preference is not important. What matters is suitability. Instead of seeking far and wide, why not try holding Guju purple bamboo shoot? I guarantee this tea will suit the princess's taste." The Mengding stone flower would yield a high harvest next year. She wasn't talking about tea. She was using it to pressure me. If I tried to be a real couple with Pei Pingjin and obediently serve her purposes, then Zhao Huaisheng could retreat unscathed. If I remained obstinate, Zhao Huaisheng would become a lamb to the slaughter. She had seized my vulnerable spot, so I could only rise with a forced smile. Accepting the gift, I turned with a face as cold as frost. The Empress Dowager ordered Pei Pingjin to move into the princess's residence, separated by a single wall, playing the role of a fake couple with hidden agendas. Pei Pingjin, competing with me, to avenge that pool of blood, openly promoted his cousin. I turned a blind eye to his actions, sending batch after batch of people to the frontier at a gallop, until after I had waited many days. The reply from the frontier and the secret letter from the Marquis both landed on my desk. I unfolded them one by one, scanned line by line, and after reading them all with a smile, my gaze turned cold as I tossed them all into the fire pit. Those loves and hatreds were licked up by the flames, turning into a heap of silver ash beneath my feet. The Empress Dowager wanted to use marriage and the harem to clip my wings, making me a trapped beast in a cage. I exchanged glances with Lingyun. Gratitude and grudges are settled. I owe him nothing. And as for them, it's time for them to die. The two next door, unaware of my murderous intent, continued to live in drunken stupor under the Empress Dowager's protection, even inching closer step by step, trying to test my limits. The priceless jewelry, Pei Pingjin bought it with my silver and turned around to put it on Lu Qingshuang's neck. The rare shoe brocade. He brazenly demanded it from me, then turned and gave it to Lu Qingshuang as fabric for her dress. My flowers, my jewelry, even the rare collectibles in my study, if Lu Qingshuang took a fancy to them, she only had to move her lips, and Pei Pingjin would present them to her with both hands. When he met my gaze, he said with full confidence, "The Empress Dowager said that my cousin has suffered fright and injustice because of your highness. I am merely offering apologies on behalf of his highness to show appeasement." I didn't even bat an eye as he came in high spirits and left with smug satisfaction, leaving the old nurse hopping with anxiety. Such fine things have gone down the throats of dogs. It pains your old servant's heart. I wanted Lingyun to kill them, to spare His Highness the sight of them. Filthy things. One more death wouldn't be too many. Watching the nurse gnash her teeth in fury, I found it amusing. Back then, my hands were stained with blood, and I insisted on reaching the summit to seize total power. She worried that even if it was kill or be killed, wouldn't there be too many deaths? Now that I've stopped killing, I'm being bullied right to my face. Yet now she's more upset than anyone. I touched the scar on her forehead and said softly, "These are just external possessions. Why get angry? Besides, they may have the chance to take them, but they won't live to spend them. From now on, never go out without 2 female guards. If you get hurt again, then you'll truly have to lie down and let me support you in your old age." The old nurse, unwilling to concede, retorted, "I'm not old yet. I was still hoping to see Your Highness get married and have little princes, but I am already married." The next day, I went to the Empress's palace. She was a concubine-born daughter of the Zhao family, unremarkable among the many outstanding Zhao women. Yet she had ambition and wisdom. When the entire Zhao family staked their future on the crown prince, my royal brother, she sought me out and laid bare the Zhao family's schemes, as well as the conspiracies of the imperial consort and the crown prince. "Your Highness, I bet on your victory, and I, too, must win." Back then, to curry favor with powerful officials and pave the way for the crown prince and the imperial consort to ascend, the Zhao family betrothed all the daughters in their household, caring only for power, regardless of suitability. She, Zhao Yuna, was betrothed as a secondary wife to the 60-year-old Marquis Wei Yuan. Burning her bridges and seeking life through death, she begged me for help. I like clever people. When the crown prince attempted a coup on that rainy night, I turned the tables and killed him beneath the city wall. At that time, the Empress and Prince Ning held half the realm, standing against me as equals. A fight to the death would only leave both sides wounded, giving our vigilant enemy nation an opportunity. That would lead to the ruin of our state and the fall of our house. The Great Yom would be in peril. Thus, we each made a concession. Let the weak and incompetent 9th prince inherit the throne, the Prince of Ning retreat to his fief, and I also hand over military power. The Empress Dowager promised the position of crown princess to her trusted confidant. So, I secured the position of crown prince's secondary consort for Zhao Yunu. Invisible smoke of gunpowder filled the harem. My struggle with the Empress Dowager never ceased. Later, the crown princess died in childbirth, and Zhao Yun'er fought her way through. Finally, she entered Weiyang Palace and became the empress above all. The new emperor was cowardly, but full of suspicion. Leveraging the Empress Dowager's influence and my protection, he surged forward triumphantly. Having become the ruler of the realm, he burned the bridge after crossing it. He assassinated the Prince of Ning and turned against the Empress Dowager, and also tried to send me to a political marriage to eliminate future trouble. Once the tripartite balance was broken, it seemed to be a life-or-death struggle. The Empress Dowager's position was not legitimate, so she could only wait. Thus, the Empress Dowager and I briefly set aside our grievances and cooperated once. But now, I look at the Empress's 7-month pregnant belly. My gaze darkened. She touched her belly, as if having made up her mind, and asked me with reddened eyes, "Do you want me to use the child as the final blow against the Empress Dowager? If so, I will prepare early." I clutched the jade I had personally found for her child, slowly raising my eyes. "No, the final strike I will personally deliver to His Majesty." I stayed half a day in Weiyang Palace. Then the Dowager Empress grew suspicious and paranoid, becoming anxious. She instigated Lu Qingshuang to search for secret letters in my study during the flower viewing banquet I hosted. Every day, under the Dowager's watchful eyes, I tried to drink Guju purple bamboo tea. But the more I drank, the more bitter it became, and the more I missed the fragrance of Mengding stone flower tea. On that day, I decided to stop drinking. The fire in the study started very suddenly. Lu Qingshuang, who was determined to succeed, was trapped by me in the courtyard. Her face turned pale, but she quickly threw herself behind Pei Pingjin, biting her lip and turning the blame around in front of others. The noble princess's study is actually full of portraits of men. No wonder she refuses to consummate her marriage with her cousin. She has someone else in her heart. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd couldn't help but whisper among themselves. More than half of these so-called guests were sent by the Dowager to watch my misfortune. She wished for my utter ruin, So naturally not a word she said was pleasant. That spoiled little girl, relying on the prince consort's protection and affection, curled her lips at me and said, "I only accidentally went into His Highness's studio and in my panic knocked over an oil lamp, burning all of His Highness's cherished memories." She bit her lip, clutching Pei Pingjian's arm, pouting and complaining, "I just can't stand it. She's already married to you, yet she keeps a room full of portraits of other men. That's clearly showing she doesn't care about you." Pei Pingjian's gaze was icy, seeming to defend her. But in fact, every word carried pressure. "My cousin is just too protective of me. After all, what man can tolerate his wife's heart and eyes being filled with others? She is also looking out for my dignity as a husband. Please, Your Highness, for the sake of the Empress Dowager, do not be angry." I nodded. The exalted Grand Princess, why should I be angry at a little girl? Then as I turned, I suddenly drew my sword. With a swoosh, it pierced through the prince consort's palm that was blocking the knife tip, and with one stroke slit the young girl's throat. My calligraphy and painting were laced with poison. The young girl fell for it, and her limbs went numb, unable to dodge in time. She died under my blade. I said contemptuously to Pei Pingjian, "You want to assert your husbandly authority, but I am upholding the court's discipline. First ruler and subject, then husband and wife. Your dignity is worthless in my eyes." With a clatter, the carriage halted on the street, abruptly cutting off my thoughts. Before I could lift the carriage curtain, I heard the tearful voice of the Lady of Yongning Marquis. "Princess, are you forcing my son to his death?" I lifted the curtain and met her gaze as she stood before the carriage. "Your Highness, why did you kill my loved ones? Insult my flesh and blood? Do you think the Marquis's mansion has no one left, or that we widows and orphans are easy to bully? If Your Highness is determined to force us to death, then you must step over my body." Another round of this public grievance-mongering. They haven't tired of it yet, but I have seen enough. I coldly tossed out a sentence. "Your beloved relative was pregnant with your child, disgracing the imperial family and damaging the heavenly majesty. I didn't kill him to vent my anger. You should thank me for showing mercy. Step aside. I need to enter the palace." The Marquise's breath caught, but she still blustered on. "I don't believe you. What happens in the princess's residence is your word alone. How am I to know the truth?" Before she could finish, I had grown tired of listening. I snatched the whip from the coachman's hand and, with a crack, sent the fragile woman of the back courtyard flying several yards. She crashed into a street vendor's stall, spat out a mouthful of blood, and finally fell silent. I climbed back into the carriage and called out to Ling Yun, "Remember to report every detail of the Marquise's miserable state to the Empress Dowager." After all, she had placed such high hopes on the Marquis's household. Yet they ended up in utter defeat. When the Empress Dowager learned of my purpose, her face was frosty. Looking down at me from her lofty position, my defiance unbowed, she asked, "Do you truly wish to sever ties with me? Are you going to stand by and watch Zhao Huaishang die? If he dies, how many peaceful days will his sister, the Empress, have? Then you will have lost completely." She had found my weak spot. It became the Empress Dowager's talisman for throwing her weight around, but I am one who yields to softness rather than force. Just as she once threatened me, I took out the protective jade pendant to the Prince of Ning that I carried with the army, and as the Empress Dowager trembled, I added a little extra. A black lacquered brocade box was presented before the Empress Dowager. She had lost all her previous composure and calmness. With suspicion, trembling, and fear, she snapped open the box. The next moment, the box fell to the ground. The lofty Empress Dowager let out an earth-shattering scream. That ear, sent back from 1,000 li away, rolled out of the box to my feet. I gently kicked it. The Prince of Ning has gone missing in battle, his fate unknown. I imagine the news will soon reach the capital. Empress Dowager, do you think if I take people to search the Prince of Ning's residence for clues, I might uncover something earth-shattering? The Empress Dowager was greatly shocked. Pointing at me, she panted, "You promised me you wouldn't lay a hand on the Prince of Ning. You also promised me you wouldn't be my enemy." Just as she wished she could tear me limb from limb, I dropped the name of Lu Qingshuang, the assassin the Emperor had sent to the capital through the Empress Dowager's hands to drive a wedge between us. The Empress Dowager's body trembled. In disbelief. She was an assassin? Otherwise, What reason did she have to keep throwing herself fearlessly onto my blade? Your Majesty, you have been the master player all your life. Yet you yourself were made a pawn. This loss is no small matter. It cost your son his throne and his life. She had been high and mighty all her life, and only at this moment did she realize she had been used to the bone. She visibly wilted. Her only son failed to win hearts on the battlefield, failed to use military power to fight back to the capital and seize the throne she had so yearned for, and instead only lost an ear. His fate unknown, alive or dead. The Empress Dowager was like a flower severed from its roots, bent and unable to straighten up again. I brushed non-existent dust off my sleeve and stood up indifferently. The matter of divorcing my husband does not require the Empress Dowager's concern. His Majesty will issue the decree. The Empress Dowager suddenly looked at me, and I delivered the final heart-piercing blow. Sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight, guess who the real culprit is that harmed the fourth imperial brother? The Empress Dowager finally spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed completely. I went to request the imperial edict for a divorce. The emperor reveled with his new favorite, sprawled on the ground with his robe half open, ambiguous marks still visible on his neck, embodying the decadent and incompetent image of a ruler indulging in wine and lust. He chewed on the grape fed into his mouth by his favored consort. Hearing my every word filled with dissatisfaction toward the marriage and hatred for the Empress Dowager, he even vaguely agreed. Too excessive. She deserves to be divorced. Yet he swiftly changed his tone. But it was ultimately a marriage bestowed by the Empress Dowager. I cannot defy filial piety. As soon as his words fell, a eunuch hurriedly leaned close to his ear, likely informing him that the moment I left Sinang Palace, the Empress Dowager had coughed up blood and fainted, rushing to summon the imperial physician. In the clash with the Empress Dowager, I had emerged victorious. His only remaining opponent was me. The emperor's gaze dimmed almost imperceptibly, yet he turned and pushed away the favored consort clinging to him. He straightened his lapels, walked over to the desk, picked up the imperial jade seal, weighed it in his hand, and casually tossed it to me. As you can see, I'm very busy. This imperial decree, you write it yourself, imperial sister. I held the heavy jade seal in my hands, meeting his gaze through a streak of sunset glow. The emperor was using the supreme symbol of orthodox imperial power and the mandate of heaven to test and coerce me. To accept it would be to place myself above the mandate of heaven, an act of wolfish ambition and treason, which would invite the world's condemnation. Not to accept it would mean the marriage still had room for negotiation, and the decree of divorcing my husband could not be issued today. I stood in the daylight, half my body bathed in light, half submerged in shadow. He was hidden deep in the shadows, his expression veiled in mist, his intentions hard to discern. I let out a soft laugh to myself. I pointed at the eunuch who had hurried over. You, come share His Majesty's burn. The young eunuch's face turned pale. He knelt with a thud. A capital crime. This servant dares not. The window paper had been poked through by the eunuch. As for the crime of defying the whole world, I, Siejishu, would not bear it. The emperor, with a look of anger at his lack of backbone, kicked the young eunuch twice. Useless thing. Can't even handle such a trivial matter. I'm standing right here, of course tacitly allowing you, this dog of a servant, to share my worries. Do you fear I would scheme against your pig's head? He wouldn't dare fall out with me. I started drafting the imperial edict myself. Twirling the jade thumb ring on my thumb, I said calmly, the Marquis's residence relied on marriage with Our Highness to maintain its glorious honor and immense wealth. Your Majesty, if the marriage fails, does the Yongning Marquis's residence still deserve to exist? Back then, the Yongning Marquis conspired with a faction, and when his scandal was about to be exposed, he committed suicide. The residents hastily sought a marriage alliance with me to escape the disaster of having their property confiscated and their clan executed. A one-time cooperation for mutual benefit is nothing to fault, but I find Pei Pingjin quite unsatisfactory. The emperor's brush paused on the edict. His wings have not yet grown. He can only force a fake smile and echo me. Of course, Her Royal Highness the eldest princess is unwilling to elevate him. He deserves nothing less than eternal damnation. I curled a faint, satisfied smile and asked, Pei Pingjin trampled on the royal family's dignity and engaged in illicit relations, a crime equivalent to deceiving the emperor. What does Your Majesty think should be done? The emperor's smile faltered. To eradicate the Marquis' estate completely would mean a complete break with the Empress Dowager. What does royal sister intend? Do not make His Majesty troubled, nor cause the Empress Dowager to lose face. 50 strokes of the board to serve as a warning, and that is all. The Emperor breathed a sigh of relief, his cold eyes hidden beneath lowered lids concealing a bone-deep killing intent. I took the imperial edict and went directly to Yongning Marquis' residence. Standing under the vermilion plaque of the back gate, I let the old nanny cheerfully beat gongs and drums to summon a crowd of onlookers from the entire street. Then, just as the entire Marquis' household came out to greet us, Ling Yun read the imperial edict publicly, and the Pei family was raided right under my nose. Madame Pei was still waiting for the Empress Dowager to save her, and spoke to me harshly. I glanced at her and said in a cold tone, "The Empress Dowager is ill. I'm afraid she hasn't woken up yet." The cold smile curling at the corner of my lips seemed to silently tell her, "This is what happens when you oppose me." Madame Pei was a weak person. She was already barely steady with someone's support, yet from shock and fear, his eyes rolled back and he fainted again. Under my cold gaze, Pei Pingjin was dragged off the hospital bed and into the public eye. His left hand, which had shielded his cousin, was pierced, and a finger from his right hand was severed. In this life, he would never master martial arts, and his hopes for the imperial examinations were dashed. Demoted to commoner status, he would never rise again. He was truly terrified now, ignoring the blood dripping from his severed finger as he struggled. He wailed and begged for mercy. "Your Highness, I was wrong. I just couldn't bear being married to your Highness without truly being husband and wife. I just couldn't stand the whole capital mocking me for relying on your Highness's protection to stand firm here. I just loathed the rumors belittling the Marquis' estate. Your Highness, I am merely a man, and for the sake of a man's pride, I committed an unforgivable mistake. As for my cousin, it was a lapse after drinking. I wronged her and I was only making amends, nothing more. I know I was wrong. I am willing to atone, to pay for my sins, to become your Highness's obedient dog. Your Highness, I beg you to spare the Marquis' estate. I wronged her. I'm just making amends. There's no affection left. I know I was wrong, and I'm willing to make up for it, to atone, to be an obedient dog by your Highness's side. Your Highness, I beg you to show mercy to the Marquis' residents." He struggled fiercely, but was still pressed down onto the bench. With the first strike of the board, he let out a shrill, pig-like squeal. Amid his screams and the trembling of the Pei family members, I raised an eyebrow and said coolly, "You've gained benefits, yet still resent others talking about it. You've committed every evil deed, but refused to allow criticism. Relying on me for a life of luxury, you still complain that I haven't fulfilled my duties as a wife and daughter-in-law. Wanting it both ways, fine. I'll take it all back and let you be thoroughly satisfied." Amid Pei Pingjin's wails, board after board came down, beating him until his flesh was torn and bloody. Only after he was left half dead and thrown onto the street did I remember to deliver one final blow. Lu Qingshuang was merely a knife to drive a wedge between you and me. A knife to sow discord between me and the Empress Dowager. The child in her belly was fake. Her demands for status and love were also fake. On this path of climbing by any means necessary to achieve your own goals, you, Pei Pingjin, have always been nothing more than a chess piece moved back and forth in our eyes. It is you who have overestimated yourself. Pei Pingjin, his body and mind in agony, was so weak that even struggling to open his eyelids was beyond him. But myriad hardships come rushing in through poverty, falling from grace. Arrogant and reckless, the Pei family has offended countless nobles. This life worse than death has only just begun. When the news of Prince Ning's death in battle reached the capital, the Empress Dowager pushed open the palace gates. Beneath her splendid robes, there was no trace of grief. Only when she stood beside me to greet Prince Ning's coffin did she say softly, "In the end, you have won. I only want my vengeance." Escorting Prince Ning's coffin back to the capital was Zhao Huaisheng. He sat astride a tall horse, his war armor soaked with wind and snow, his posture like a long sword, his brow sharp and his black eyes like deep pools. On the carriage behind him sat a delicate, slender girl, a resilient girl. When Zhao Huaisheng was cornered by the Emperor's schemes and the Empress Dowager's moves, driven into a desperate situation and falling off a cliff to face certain death, It was she, a herb gatherer, who evaded countless pursuers, even risking her life multiple times to draw the chase away, then turned back to carry Zhao Huaisheng on her back. Only then did he help her escape and return to the military camp. Because she had endured the pain and neglected her injury, the girl's left leg had rotted and was now lame. She was also jilted. Zhao Huaisheng, being a loyal and righteous man, promised to take care of her for the rest of her life. A gust of wind lifted the gauze curtain, and I faced the girl from a distance. She stared blankly at me, unable to hide the pure curiosity and astonishment in her eyes. Her brows arched gently, and her features were clear and beautiful. She was a gentle and well-behaved girl. Zhao Huaisheng noticed my gaze and, as if afraid I might bully her, reached back to pull the curtain, blocking the girl's lovely face. Gentle and considerate, very much like his style. But from start to finish, he never once looked at me.
He still hated me.
9. The day before consort Zhao and the crown prince staged the coup, Zhao Yun'er had deceived him into leaving the capital with false news that I was in danger. Yet at the city god temple, I threw myself into his arms, drugged him, and locked him in the dungeon. He was as warm as jade and as upright as bamboo. The Zhao family dared not gamble his love for me against his loyalty to De Yong, so they kept him tightly in the dark. I did not gamble either. I knew that when faced with the impossible choice between loyalty and filial piety, he would choose death to preserve his honor. That is why I hid him so well. When he emerged again, the Zhao family had been almost entirely wiped out. His most beloved aunt was strangled by me in the Guanji Palace, and the crown prince who grew up with him, I had his head cut off and hung high on the city wall. To him, this was like the heavens crumbling and the earth splitting apart. He pointed his sword at my throat, his eagle-like eyes bloodshot as he demanded, "Why didn't you kill me too?" I stepped forward, letting the tip of his sword pierce my skin. Blood rolled down his chest robe, like tears I could never shed. I had no other choice. Walking on this endless path, he and I had long become mortal enemies. It was either his death or mine. Huaisheng, my feelings for you have never changed. But this heavy love can neither save my life nor avenge the blood debt of my mother and younger brother who died tragically at the hands of the imperial noble consort. You dislike my bloodlust. I promise that from now on, I will be reasonable, okay? His hand holding the sword trembled, and pain churned in his cold eyes. In the end, that sword pressed against my throat. The blade deviated, stabbing into my chest. Blood and his resolve fell together. The grudges between us are over. From now on, there are only ruler and subject, no more affection. That sword I gave him with my own hands on his birthday, after piercing my chest, clattered to the ground. What shattered was 15 years of deep love and loyalty. The Zhao family is so clever. When they hid it from Zhao Huaisheng, weren't they betting that even if I won, I would still protect his life? They won the gamble. Zhao Huaisheng, thanks to my efforts, escaped from danger, but rode north through the night to the battlefield. He left for 7 years. When the Eastern Liao crown prince offered 3 cities to marry me, the royal governess said that if Huaisheng knew, he would be frantic with worry. In truth, I had sent him a letter for help. My wedding dress is still here. Would you marry me? The young general who, after my mother's death, knelt before the consort and risked death to protect me, the childhood friend who would hide snacks and trinkets to secretly cheer me up when entering the palace, the one who, before the coup, Zhao Huaisheng, who naively said he would request an imperial marriage decree for us, never replied. In the end, we stood on opposite sides of interests, separated by lives and power, no longer able to stand shoulder to shoulder. The bright red wedding gown I had embroidered for so long was burned to ashes by me that night. That night, I said I had married myself to my ambition. The sound of carriage wheels pulled me back to reality, and my gaze fell on that faint, graceful silhouette. I finally felt at ease. Zhao Huaisheng had found his fulfillment. At Prince Ning's funeral, the emperor fully displayed brotherly affection and deep grief. The Empress Dowager twisted her prayer beads, staring at the swirling incense smoke the entire time, without any extra expression. It wasn't until the emperor returned to the palace late at night and suddenly collapsed from his dragon throne, losing all sensation in his lower body, that the imperial physicians diagnosed that the emperor had been poisoned with a chronic toxin. The poison had reached his marrow. The Empress Dowager went to see him, standing by the bed, looking down at his genuine fear and false cowardice. She asked, "Why did you poison the Guju Zisen tea that I bestowed, killing Xie Zhishu and getting rid of me in one fell swoop?" The emperor shook his head repeatedly. "Mother, I was also raised at your knee. How could I scheme against you? It was Xie Zhishu. She schemed against us, mother and son. She deliberately drove a wedge between us, mother. She used the empress to poison me. Mother, the crown prince is gone. I am your only support now. You cannot fall for Xie Zhishu's trap." But the Empress Dowager sneered, pulling out the emperor's secret decree. As his pupils trembled, she leaned in, gritting her teeth. "My son swallowed poison. He wanted me to avenge him. Is he framing you with his own death as well?" The emperor's face went pale. The Empress Dowager straightened up, her smile ghastly. "Poisoning himself. To make me and Xie Zhishu suspect each other and ultimately fight to the death. No matter who wins or loses, you sit securely on high, reaping the benefits." The emperor's scheme was exposed. Panic-stricken, he shouted for his guards. But the entire harem was in the grip of the empress and Empress Dowager. His men had all become corpses at the bottom of dry wells. I walked in slowly, holding the imperial jade seal in my hands, glancing sideways at the emperor amidst his trembling and disbelief. The honey trap, the divide and conquer tactic, psychological warfare, and even using a borrowed knife to kill. You are masterful, but unfortunately, you missed one move. Prince Ning's attendant returned to the capital alive, and the truth of Prince Ning's death will come to light. The emperor's eyes suddenly widened. He cried out in frustration, "Zhao Huaishang has returned to the capital. He has already submitted to me. If you dare to rebel, he will surely defend the capital. Then the great Yong will change its surname to Zhao, and the Empress Dowager and the princess will die without even a place to be buried." I let out a scornful laugh and waved my hand. The healer girl Yi Jiangxing, whom the emperor had taken away while Zhao Huaishang was escorting Prince Ning into the mansion, walked through the door. The empress, with her big belly, curled her lips at me. "Just as you predicted, this man is again using someone's weakness to force them to draw their swords. Miss Yi is unharmed, Your Highness the Princess, rest assured. Defending the capital, the emperor is not wrong. But they are not protecting your majesty." Our eyes all fell on the emperor. "This time, you have lost." The emperor refused to believe it, struggling for his life. "I have received my mandate from heaven. I am the rightful ruler blessed by the ancestors. How could I lose to a few treacherous women like you? I don't believe it." Slap. Yi Jiangxing, who had been hiding behind the crowd, suddenly delivered a fierce slap to his face. Amidst everyone's stunned silence, she straightened her neck and angrily retorted, "The victor is king and the loser is a bandit. What does that have to do with gender? If you despise women so much, remember that you yourself crawled out from between a woman's legs." She felt her words were crude and shot me an awkward glance. I lifted the corner of my mouth and praised, "Miss Yi, well said." Her dark eyes lit up, and her cheeks bloomed with a shy blush. She was a young female physician from a border town who had delivered countless babies. Her hands had cradled one life after another into the world. Her nature was just like those hands, gentle yet resilient, standing tall and proud. After the emperor kidnapped her, she even considered dying to preserve her integrity, refusing to become a burden to Zhao Huaishang and me. I was glad for Zhao Huaishang. After he had been broken and shattered, he had met such a wonderful girl. "Guards! Guards!" the emperor roared, thrashing about. With a thud, he fell off the bed, his legs that had been feigning illness. The emperor couldn't move an inch. The empress said coldly, "The kidney tonifying soup I sent you daily not only helps your majesty maintain your virility every night, but also helps you deplete your vitality and die, so you can meet your ancestors sooner. Isn't that considerate?" The emperor roared in fury. "Impossible. I had your soup inspected every day. It was merely overly nourishing with no poison." The Empress Dowager let out a sneer. "The soup is harmless, but the incense before my son's shrine was specially made. The soup and incense are each non-toxic on their own, but when combined, they cause a person to waste away and die. First, the limbs go numb. Then speech becomes slurred, then even opening the eyes becomes difficult, and finally, inch by inch, suffocation, smothered to death." The emperor's face changed drastically. He was terrified. He crawled pathetically to the Empress Dowager's feet. Clutching the hem of her robe, he begged, "I was raised at your Majesty's knee since the age of 7. I have always been obedient and sensible, never disobeying your Majesty. I beg you, for the sake of our bond as mother and son, save me. Save me. If I save you, who will save my son?" The Empress Dowager kicked the Emperor hard in the chest. He collapsed and couldn't get up. The Empress then brought forth the imperial edict. I placed it before the Emperor. "While your hands are still usable, abdicate in favor of a worthier person. Dealing with you hypocritically for years has made me sick." The Emperor's hand trembled as he knocked over the writing brush. "I will not write it. You are rebels and traitors." Before he could finish, I kicked him in the mouth, and he fell flat on his back. Blood sprayed from his mouth, pain overwhelming him, his mind blank. "If you won't write, then let our good Emperor taste the torment of 1,000 cuts." As I spoke, I drew the dagger from my waist and struck without hesitation. I sliced off the Emperor's left ear. Amid his earth-shattering screams, I said disdainfully, "The Empress Dowager has withdrawn from the struggle. The Empress only seeks safety. This realm was always destined to be mine." A dignified edict is meant to save face for the former court officials, but it's not absolutely necessary. With the imperial seal in hand, I am the mandate of heaven. Just as the Emperor started in shock, I turned sharply to him, each word dripping with ruthlessness. "Those who follow me shall prosper. Those who oppose me shall be killed without mercy." In the end, His Majesty fell gravely ill. The imperial edict abdicating the throne fell into my hands. I let the Empress Dowager personally avenge her son's death. With her wish fulfilled, she had no strength left to contend, and as promised, she supported me as emperor. Afterward, she went to the Hubwa temple and knelt before the Buddha for a lifetime, praying solely for Prince Ning's blessings. How the Empress's child came to be, she knew, and so did I. The Emperor had sought to eliminate her root and branch more than once. All were shielded under my wings. As for the child, I did not investigate further, allowing her this sole solace within the deep palace. What reason did she have to oppose me, only to invite the fate of 2 lives lost in one fell swoop? 2. That dragon throne I seized through a path of blood now truly lay prostrate beneath me, just as the civil and military officials below the steps bowed low and hailed me with long lives and boundless praise. From then on, destiny was mine to decree, rules mine to establish, right and wrong mine to judge. I needed no one to grant me legitimacy, nor anyone to protect me. I myself was the way of heaven. I was the law, the will of the people. As a woman, I seized the light of the sun and moon, wielded the power of the realm, and finally became my own firmament. Extra. Yi Jiangxing, this marks my 10th year stationed at the frontier with the general. I married his deputy general, and we now have children and grandchildren. As I brought the fruit wine prepared for our daughter's birthday feast, General Zhao stood under the cold moonlight, gazing toward the capital, holding a faded sword tassel in his hand. Alone and solitary all these years, His Majesty has ruled with an iron fist yet governed with benevolence, his might spreading across the seas, his virtue reaching every corner, governing Daong well. Her ex-husband was worn down to a rotten death. The entire Pei family scattered like a tree fallen and monkeys fleeing, some dead, some escaped, unrecognizable. Those past events became trivial jokes trodden underfoot by the Empress. Over the years, she has never lacked male favorites and paramours. My naive husband, full of enthusiasm, ordered an investigation but discovered sorrowfully that not a single person bore even the slightest resemblance to the general's brows or eyes. The Empress no longer bore any trace of having loved the general. Yet the general, for 10 years as if it were one day, clung to the sword tassel he couldn't let go. That year, when I picked him up at the foot of the cliff, he anxiously tugged at my sleeve, only begging me to go to the capital. Tell her not to fall for the enemy's schemes. The thing clenched tightly in his hand was that sword tassel. He had become the leverage and weakness of the capital's powerful men to manipulate his beloved. At that moment, he knew that he, as a person, along with his feelings, would always be a sword hanging over Her Highness's head. He could not protect her. In both love and protection, he had utterly lost. He wore armor with his heart toward the nation, loyal to the ruler his entire life, guarding the righteous path under heaven. Her blood stained her battle robe, her sword pointed at the dragon throne. In this life, she plotted to seize power, vying for thousands of miles of rivers and mountains. He upheld the orthodox rites and laws. She shattered the shackles of the mundane world. He could not betray his kin, forget blood feuds, or change sides. She could not stop or let her life fall into others' hands. The nation and love could not both be fulfilled. Loyalty and love were destined to destroy each other. So he begged me, help me deceive her. She is such a clever person. Only a woman as detached as you could make her willingly submit. Only by breaking free from me, breaking free from the past, can she fly higher and go farther. I cannot help her, nor should I be her shackle. The general understands her well. After she glanced at my lame leg from afar, she turned away with relief, letting the sword she had carried for years fall in the corridor. She did not just put down the sword, she also let go of the general and love. She was so wise and infallible in her calculations, firmly grasping everyone's heart. Without spending a single soldier, she effortlessly seized a timeless empire. That night, I saw with my own eyes as she walked out of the emperor's bedchamber, holding the imperial decree. The lamplight stretched her shadow tall and solitary, her figure majestic and towering. Suddenly, I felt a bit envious of the general. So he had been with someone so remarkable, had loved so deeply. Later, my faint admiration for the general receded like a flood. I had revered his solitary courage and his righteousness in guarding the land, but I respected the female emperor even more for stepping alone onto the blood-soaked path. The difficulty of controlling the rise and fall of the world. I married my silly husband. I do not have the empress's grandeur, nor the general's unwavering loyalty. I only want to use these hands that deliver babies to hold my steady happiness. The general guards the snowy frontier, the empress commands the court storms, across thousands of miles. In this life, they gaze at each other but remain apart, long for each other but dare not acknowledge. Yet I think the empress's heart is so vast, she and her ambitions like a hurricane, that faded sword tassel, in the end, too light and too small, scattered by a single gust of wind.